In the real world, it is often difficult to always apply dashboard design best practices. So what happens when you have to deal with people who are very insistent on having things a certain way, even though that way may not be optimal? This is going to be one such example. Hi, I'm Nicholas Kelly, and in this case study, I'll walk through my approach to dealing with the blending of reports from two sales departments into one dashboard. We'll look at the steps taken to merge digital sales and packaged goods sales. The primary focus will be on wireframing the solution from the low-fidelity wireframe using the dashboard wireframe kit to a high-fidelity interactive wireframe. The company is a publisher of computer games, and the fundamental challenge they were having was how they sell. They had two different departments. The first department was the traditional department. They would sell computer games in boxes. So you would go into the computer store and buy your game and come home and install it on your computer, versus where the trend was going. The other department was digital sales. So you would open up your console, you would log on to the store and purchase your game and immediately download it and be able to play it. And this caused three major problems. So different reports for digital versus the box products, multiple reporting technologies. So there was OBIE and then there was Excel. And then there wasn't a unified view of sales performance. So you couldn't see across the board how were sales. You could only see by these two departments. As you might imagine, the objective was going to be pretty clear: to design a sales dashboard that unifies digital sales and box product sales. But also there was a bit of nuance here. They wanted it for all roles and all levels. And this isn't how I would typically approach it. I would tend to like to have the persona priority. So we would design for a specific role and a specific level. Ideally a blend of both. In this case, they wanted one size fits all. So they were already doing a very major departure by having two different reports. They were unifying them together into one. And so they found that the highest value. Later on, they would then go and start breaking this new dashboard down into separate personas. Looking at the process for this project, there was a little bit of a lesser focus on interviewing stakeholders and users. As you will see, they were one and the same person. So we're going to have a look at the personas, and then we're going to go right down to wireframing. But we're going to take a deep dive into wireframing. We're going to look at low-fidelity wireframes, which is what I will always do. And on occasion, I will do high-fidelity wireframes if it's a fairly high risk and high value dashboard we're building. So we're going to be looking at those two parts of the process. The cast of characters here included the business stakeholders, an end user, an analyst, and the consultant. So there were several business stakeholders, but they were not the direct consumers of the dashboards and the reports. The end user and analyst were one and the same person, and as you'll see, she had a lot on her plate, and this is who we're going to design the persona for. And then there was the consultant, which was myself. Diving into who this dashboard was for, we've got Christine Jones. She's been the only user of these existing reports to date. She was the one who's reporting it out to both sides, and she was getting very, very frustrated with always being asked for a unified view, but not being able to come up with it. And it would always be something very custom she'd have to put together in Excel for the management. So she was the one feeling the most pain. So the first version of this dashboard was really just to focus on solving her needs. So some of the key characteristics: she's very, very knowledgeable in the technologies that were being used. She's technically competent, very, very technical. And then she spent a huge chunk of her time actually creating the reports. Now there were several goals. Wanted a single source of truth, obviously aligned with being able to bring that into one technology. Reducing the number of filters. One of the things to note here is she had over 300 filters for game titles, and they were not sorted. So she would spend, when we timed this, it was 15 to 20 seconds, up to 15 to 20 seconds scrolling down to find the filter that she wanted. And bizarrely, they were not sorted. There was absolutely no sorting going on. Wanted to enable self-service, so she didn't have to massage the data all the time. They ultimately wanted then to start deploying this to the product manager, so every game title would have its own manager. Apply unified forecast, so this was going to be something that was a bit new, that they wanted to apply a sales forecast to this unified view of the data. They wanted to improve the user experience. The current dashboards and reports are absolutely terrible. And then apply some of the brand. And that was a mixed blessing. Certainly it was good in terms of the openness to be able to create a well-designed interface. The downside was sometimes brand isn't too up to speed on what is and is not good use of color for a dashboard. As usual, I like to have a quote from the persona in question. She'd said, "The digital sales reports are in OBIE and my box product sales are in Excel. It sucks. I never have a single overview of all sales." Her challenges, there are many, but these are the top 4. Massive time to generate reports, over 300 filters in the drop-down unsorted, very slow to refresh the data and not getting it to the right people. The typical metrics she looks at, and again, I include this because we want to make sure our solution at least has these, because people may get upset if they're not there. It'll be like the first thing they see. "Oh, my old report, I always had these. This one's rubbish. It's not solving the questions I need." So always include these by default. Total sales, sales versus plan, units sold week to date, channel inventory. The approach was to satisfy the immediate needs of the target persona, and we would look to versions 2 and 3 of the dashboard to apply more rigor and best practices. A quick recap on the storytelling basics I use in the dashboards that I design. Follow the basic narrative. Once upon a time, there was a persona. One day, something happened. Something happened as a KPI. Because of that, there was some impact. These are the charts. Because of that, there may be other impacts. So we may see the impact of what's happening in the KPI. It goes orange. We may see that replicated, and we should see that replicated to give us more detail of what's going on in the charts. So we should be seeing orange in the charts, and that should be helping us understand what the problem is and allow us to take action and ultimately resolve the problem. And this is why we take a persona focus, because the dashboard on a navigation level should align with the needs of the persona, and the navigation should be named so that the persona can perfectly understand what they are. So we're designing for the persona and their needs. So we'll start there at navigation level. That's where the story starts. We introduce the characters. Story highlight is next, the KPIs. Do I need to act? And then we move down to the charts, the story resolution. What action should I take in order to solve those problems? Going into a little bit more detail, you can see how this might be manifest in a more traditional looking dashboard. We have the navigation at the top. You can see in the KPIs, there's orange, there's something calling our attention to it. And then we can see over on the right side, oh look, there's a path, my eye's being drawn. What else is orange? Okay, 2 of the charts have orange. Ultimately, because we've been very, very conscious in the design and very deliberate about it, we know there's an action to be taken. In this case, it's to call a supplier and ask, why are we short on inventory for 3 product lines? Directly leading to action and resolution. During a workshop with the business stakeholders and the end user persona, we came up with this wireframe. So this was what we put together with the dashboard wireframe kit. Remember, this is low fidelity. So we're not looking for absolute accuracy. We're really looking for what questions are we trying to answer and how we're going to manifest that on the interface. So we decided on 3 primary filters. So by region, by the revenue model. And remember, we have packaged goods here, which is the box products we've been talking about, and the digital goods. And they were the 2 different sales departments that we're bringing together here. So we're calling that revenue model. And then we have a by account. So who are we selling through? Then KPIs at the top, units sold week to date. Remember, these are the numbers that were, like we have to have in the dashboard that she's used to looking at. Gross revenue year to date. It's orange. We just wanted to show if something's bad, that's how it's going to look in the KPI. A revenue versus plan percentage, and then a top title. Ultimately, we wanted the top 5 titles, and you'll see that how that's going to look like in the high fidelity wireframe. So it'll be important to look at the differences between the 2. As we get into the 4 charts here, how is our sales compared to our forecast and plan? What is our revenue mix? And this is more related to the revenue models. We want to compare how our packaged goods, box goods are doing compared to the digital goods. What is the sales variance of games compared to forecast? So this is like a plus or minus, a nice way of visualizing that. And obviously anything below the line is orange, and we're going to be worried about it. And you can see then there's the connection between the gross revenue KPI on the top and this chart down the bottom. And finally, how are our games selling by account compared to plan? Ultimately, probably going to tweak this visualization a little bit, but we're using the double bars to show actual versus plan. Probably show a target line, as you're going to see in the high fidelity wireframe. Next, we're going to look at a deep dive into the high fidelity wireframe. So here you're seeing a screenshot of it. We're going to go through the interactions of it, but I wanted to prepare you for the kind of visual complexity that this has. There was a lot of requests and a lot of requirements and no focus on a persona. And this is what happens when you do that. When you don't have a very, very narrow focus and you're trying to answer questions for a wide group of people, and we're blending two departments here, and they wanted everything in the dashboard. So this is what that looks like. So I'm showing you something that, ideally is, we want to do best practice all the time, but what happens in the real world, and also what happens when brand gets involved, and you don't have the kind of buy-in you want from the senior executives to kind of do it exactly the best way. I like to put this as a version 1. This is a version 1. A version 3 of this looks a lot better. It's a lot cleaner, but it's a process and it's a journey, and you have to go through it with all the stakeholders involved. We can't expect everyone to be on the same page right out of the gate. So this is already vastly better and a huge improvement over what was there previously to this. While this is visually complex, there is still a journey and storytelling and action built into it. So let's go through that journey now. So you can see there's something orange up the top here, the KPI. This is what's grabbing our attention and telling us we need to investigate. So we're seeing 87,000, it's off target. Okay, it's orange. Okay, let's look down on the charts for what else is orange. I'm drawing the eye down here. Now you can also see there's orange on the previous weeks, and that was a way to really quickly focus on, well, we did have some weeks of bad performance, and that's those highlighted, so you don't have to go flicking through every single week. Now that's not related to why we have this 87,000. So let's go down to the orange in the charts. Now we can see the first thing that's grabbing our attention is a -6% variance between our actual revenue and our forecast revenue. And so it's telling us, okay, it's a revenue problem versus forecast. We expected to sell more. So what's happening? Something is off according to our plan. And we definitely want to understand what that is. Where is that happening? Now we can get to the where a little bit here. When we look over to the chart to the right, where's our revenue mix? And we can see there's orange there under the digital section. So we know it's in the digital goods. It's the games we're selling online. And as we look down, we see quite a bit more orange on the bottom left chart. What is the sales variance of games compared to forecast? And we're seeing there's a bunch of games here that are off. Now, we know it's digital, so we're gonna filter on digital. So you can see on the left, I filtered there on digital, and you can see the problem down the bottom left. The bars have gotten longer. So that's interesting. Obviously, it makes sense because we knew the problem was in digital, and it's been exacerbated now down here in the bottom left. There is a reason why you can also tab on these charts by title and by account. We're going to click on by account. And now you can see it's telling us something a bit more interesting. It's all with Sony. All of those titles are with Sony. Now in this case, we enabled right back on the dashboard, so we could actually comment. And you can see there's a comment on that. So I'll select it. Patrick McNamara. He's saying Sony had an outage in North America for 3 days during this period. So now we know exactly what's going on. The beauty of this is we're getting down to understanding what the problem is within maybe 10 seconds. And then we're able to take action. And there's two things we can do. We call Patrick and say, Patrick, I understand there was this problem. Can you tell me a bit more detail about it? And then you can go talk to Sony and figure out what happened. Obviously, servers went down there. How are we going to make sure this doesn't happen again? Because we're out 200,000. Flicking over to another tab, the channel inventory tab. Also want to show you how we got the narrative going in something that maybe has a lot of bad stuff going on. So the risk of showing a lot of red is it may cause inaction. Someone might see, wow, there's a lot of going on here. I don't know where to start. Therefore, I'm just going to close it. Perhaps it's just too painful to deal with. So in those cases, when we do need to show lots of bad stuff, but let's say we understand people are just busy, they have a lot going on, they're probably not going to deal with all the red things going go in there in the dashboard. So I've artificially inflated one of the dots here on the channel inventory chart over to the right. I've made it big. If you're going to deal with one thing in the 5 minutes you have with this dashboard, click on this one. Now what this chart is telling us is something that's in the top left. We plan to sell a lot of games, but we don't have a lot of inventory for that game. Now think of a dot. A dot is a combination of a game and a store. So that big red dot is telling us there is a store, a specific store that has a specific title that we expect to sell a lot of, but they don't have a lot of that in stock. Now look what happens when I click on it. It's very, very simple. Now this can be a tooltip, or you can just click on it, whatever the technology enables that you're using. Now we can see it is with GameStop, and it's with the computer game Warzone 7 on the Xbox One. They have 102 units. We have forecast that they will sell 4,500 units. Big discrepancy there. The beauty of this is we have our path to action again. It's a call to that specific store, and we're asking one of two things. Is your inventory up to date? Yes, no. If it is up to date, okay, we need to take the action to ship you a ton of units. If it's not up to date, then could you please update your inventory so we can get an accurate reflection of what it is? And again, ideally, we're talking maybe 10 seconds to understand what it is we need to do, what action we need to take, and then we can go take that action. And ideally then, that gets sorted out. Depending on how quickly the data is refreshed, next time we open that dashboard, hopefully that dot is no longer there and we've got another big dot that we need to deal with. Even with a lot of visual distraction, it was still possible to maintain a path to action. So I'd like to thank you for joining me in this product sales use case, and I hope you got some value from it and you can start to apply it to your own business. You can get your own dashboard wireframe kit on nixsite.com, as well as training and articles, anything related to dashboard design and dashboard adoption. Also, if you sign up to my newsletter, you'll be able to get updates on when I post new case studies. Thank you very much.